Welcome into the show and a happy Monday to everybody. Coming up here on the San Francisco 49ers Report, could the Niners trade away Brandon Aiyuk in exchange for a first-round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft if both sides cannot come to an agreement on a contract extension and or if Aiyuk wants out so that he can go somewhere where he can get wide receiver one money and wide receiver one targets? An NFL insider for ESPN predicted that the Niners are going to deal Aiyuk away for a first-rounder. Stay tuned. A lot of thoughts on that. Also, could the past relationship between Bill Belichick and the Shanahan family lead to the Niners hiring him to replace Steve Wilks as San Francisco's next defensive coordinator? First, make sure you subscribe to the channel for daily and year-round coverage of the Niners. This is your offseason go-to spot for everything San Francisco. Lock us in. Hit that sub button right now. As for the latest on Brandon Aiyuk, let's start there. And let me say that this is going to be one of the biggest offseason storylines across the entire National Football League. Aiyuk is going into the fifth year of his rookie contract after the Niners exercise his fifth-year option. He's guaranteed $14+ million this upcoming season in 2024, and Aiyuk is going to demand a new deal before the season, most likely, just like we've seen in previous years with George Kittle, Fred Warner, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, all consecutively. These players want long-term financial stability, and Aiyuk is next. And of course, the big question here, does Aiyuk want to remain with the San Francisco 49ers? He could want $25+ million a year and wide receiver one targets. And do the Niners conversely want to keep him on that price tag? And can they even afford him with all of the sizable cap hits on this Niners team going into 2024? Things are starting to get a little bit tight financially for San Francisco, and that's why the pressure is on after losing and letting that Super Bowl slip away 8 days ago against the Kansas City Chiefs in Las Vegas. If the Niners don't want to sign Aiyuk, there is a realistic path in which they do trade him away, especially if the asking price is too exorbitant. And if a team is willing to trade a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk, is that too good of an offer for the Niners to pass up on, considering some of the other needs that they have elsewhere on this roster? And I'm telling you this right now, I've said it before, we talked about it last week. If the 49ers don't want to pay Brandon Aiyuk, I guarantee you there is a wide receiver starved team out there looking to get a number one wide receiver for their quarterback who has the money to pay Brandon Aiyuk, and they're going to be more than happy to give that contract extension to Aiyuk, which I think is starting to get a little bit richer when you look at the contract for Deebo Samuel being at about $24 million, and I think Aiyuk is better with the salary cap going up and with the wide receiver market continuing to increase, and it could be reset depending on what type of deal Justin Jefferson signs with the Minnesota Vikings. And the thought process here for San Francisco is, if we can't pay Aiyuk or we don't want to pay Aiyuk, we trade him away for a first-round pick. They could draft a wide receiver in the first round or later who's much cheaper than Aiyuk, or they could address a position of need, like, let's say, getting a right tackle to be a franchise pillar in which you use that draft pick that you got for Aiyuk and you select a right tackle like a Joe Alt from Notre Dame who's a terrific player. Interesting stuff here from NFL insider Dan Graziano, who said this in one of his columns, one of his stories for ESPN today. Quote, "To me, the most likely way this shakes out is Aiyuk ends up getting traded to a team where he's the clear number one wideout and where he can get the extension that he wants, leaving the Niners to draft his replacement in the first round. That's the cleanest way for them to address all of their other needs. I see San Francisco extending Talanoa Hufanga and coming to some sort of arrangements with Kyle Juszczyk, Dre Greenlaw, where they keep both of them around to open up salary cap space, by the way. And that leaves the Niners to run it back with the same basic core, some upgrades in key spots, and Aiyuk cheering them on from afar. And Aiyuk, I imagine the competitor that he is, knows that he could go to a different team, get wide receiver one money, $25+ million per year, and wide receiver one targets, so that he can put up even greater production than he did this past year, when he had nearly 1,400 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns, was second in yards per catch, second among all wide receivers as far as Pro Football Focus grade, and he can really be noticed league-wide as one of the best wideouts in the game. I believe that to be true right now, but a lot of people aren't giving him that credit because he's on an offense with Christian McCaffrey, who had more than 2,000 all-purpose yards, Deebo Samuel at the same position, as well as George Kittle. Now, why would a team trade a first-rounder for Aiyuk? That's, of course, a part of this conversation here, right? He's gotten better every year. Second-team All-Pro player in 2023, so he's ascending, rounding into his best days ahead of him. He's a great route runner, awesome footwork, a complete wide receiver who can be utilized from goal line to goal line. Use him in the red zone, great route runner to spring free, to create separation. He's a vertical threat, as he presented and proved this year. And a team that's in need of a wide receiver, looking for a player who's not older, who's still only 25 years old, they could pay him wide receiver one money, give him wide receiver one targets, and the Niners can't necessarily say that they're going to be able to do that. And can the Niners realistically pay Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk both top dollar at the same position? Could be tough. Now, there is a way in which the Niners can do this, and I think that they have to do this. I would not trade away Aiyuk. I think it would be an idiotic move. You backload that Aiyuk contract. You have Deebo Samuel for one more year. You let the dead money go down, and maybe you look to trade away Deebo going into 2025. Can't really do it in 2024 because of the dead cap number. Aiyuk is only going to continue to get better. And I think his best ball is ahead of him. He's evolved into a great wide receiver, an all-around wide receiver for Brock Purdy. In looking at some of the film study, the Kansas City Chiefs were not scared to jam some of the Niners wide receivers at the line of scrimmage, and that stymied the Niners passing attack and threw them off guard. With Brandon Aiyuk, you can't always do that because he can get free at the line with the good footwork, with the great route running. Deebo Samuel isn't as good of a route runner, and Aiyuk is more durable, younger player, more productive, and the better wide receiver. But if a team offers a first-round pick for Aiyuk, it could be tough for the Niners to turn that down. And I think it would be a massive mistake. We saw what happened in a very, very similar situation, ironically enough, after the Niners lost their last Super Bowl in Super Bowl 54 with DeForest Buckner. Niners traded him away. They kept Eric Armstead, who's the lesser player. And if they trade away Aiyuk and keep Deebo, who's the lesser player, who's been injured more, that's a mistake. So with that, this is the pinned comment and the pinned question and the poll question for today's show. Would you trade Brandon Aiyuk for a first-round pick? Type T for trade, K for keep. I would not do it. Next up here on the show, let's hit this. Could the previous past relationship between Bill Belichick and the Shanahan family lead to Kyle Shanahan calling Bellichick to gauge his interest in becoming the next Niners defensive coordinator? Going back to the late 90s and early 2000s, Bill Belichick has always respected the Shanahan family when he was very close to Mike Shanahan. That's a long-standing relationship between Bellichick and the Shanahan family. After the Patriots traded, and before they traded Jimmy Garoppolo to San Francisco, Bellichick had a direct line of communication with Kyle Shanahan, and he utilized that. They communicated. Then in 2020, following the Super Bowl loss for San Francisco, guess who reached out to Kyle Shanahan? Bill Belichick. So there is a fond admiration between both parties. It makes sense for San Francisco to at least call Bill Belichick to gauge his interest because he's one of the best defensive minds of all time. And a lot of you might be saying, Chase, that's ridiculous. Belichick's ego, why would he take this job? Because he doesn't have a job and he loves the game of football. Why I think Bellichick makes a lot of sense? On the unemployment line, one of the best defensive minds ever. He's not tied to a specific scheme. He wants to work. He wants to coach. That's why he interviewed with the team like the Atlanta Falcons and trying to get that job. Who would want to pass up on an opportunity to coach a defense led by Fred Warner, the best linebacker of this generation, and Nick Bosa, with an offense led by Kyle Shanahan? And for Shanahan, he can lean on Belichick because he's won 6 titles as a head coach, and he's a great tactician and a great manager of the game, which is where Kyle Shanahan falls short. If I'm Shanahan, I'm going all in on trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm making the call to Bill Belichick. So wanted to cover that and talk about it on today's San Francisco 49ers Report. Don't forget to subscribe. Back in the studio tomorrow, going live. And our off-season schedule, Tuesday, Thursday live shows, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. Shows every single day. Informative, entertaining, insightful Niners analysis. So keep it locked right here. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Hope all of you enjoyed your extended weekends as it is President's Day. And we'll catch you tomorrow right here on the show.